Hello and welcome to journal entry number 10. And the main topic I will be discussing today deals with Act 1 of your script. Now, this is something very, very important, and it's something very instrumental to how the rest of your movie is going to go and how the rest of your writing is going to be. So, Act 1 is where you have to set up your points for your script and your story, and then it leads on into the next acts. But really, Act 1 is what you need to focus on more and more as you write it. And with the film I picked, um, it does a good job of kind of having the first act be the one thing that leads your film to success. And this movie that I'm going to talk about does a really good job of that. And they really nail it with how Act 1 should go. So, the main topics that I'm going to be talking about with Act 1 is when you do Act 1, make it look professional. Set everything up right, make it seem good. It's like a resume for a new job. You have to kind of have it look good and ensure that everything you want to put into Act 1 is put there. And the next thing is to have good dialogue to go along with your first act because kind of like Batman and Robin, the first line in the film, it didn't do it any good. So you have to make good dialogue within the first part and good acting so that the audience can get involved with the characters that are being introduced, and then we can decide if we can like them or hate them. Another thing is that there's a thing called runners, where essentially in runners, you get a sense of, okay, when you see the character, what's his favorite food, what's his favorite this, what's his favorite that, what are his hobbies. It gets you into the mindset of the character, and you get to see some of the personal things they like to do. So when you see it in future films, it's not out of character. It doesn't seem very different. And the main purpose of these films is it gets the character very familiar with what they're doing. It gets the people watching it the sense of who these people are, what they're doing, and really how they're doing it is something that this film has to do a good job of doing, or otherwise it could just fall flat. And any spectator can recognize this just from, yet again, the first couple of minutes of the film, the first hour or so of the film, or the first even 40 minutes of the film has to be about building up your characters. Who are they? What are their hobbies? What's their interests? What's their plot? What are they doing? And then you could just go on from there and you could just make it a whole lot better than what it can be. And there are some advantages to this. Like, for example, you do get into the mindset of the characters. You get to see them in ways that you can also relate to. But, however, there are some disadvantages to it. And essentially, some disadvantages to it involve what's the word? If you do too much of it in the first act, if you do it too much, then it throws off the rest of the movie because everything isn't as self-paced as that first act because you blew through it. Then again, if you also have a slow first act and the movie goes way too fast towards the second and third act, then everything just falls flat. And you don't really want that with these films. So it's really important as a strategy for a writer is to make your first act really solid, pull people into it, and let people kind of experience what it's all about. Let us see the world that you're building. Let us see the characters you want us to relate to. Let us see how the story is going to connect entirely from this one act. It sets up everything, and it's important that you focus on it. You introduce what you need, and then you just go from there. So the film I'm going to be talking about is City of God, which came out in 2002, and essentially the movie is about the growth of organized crime in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And the film presents the theory that I've talked about with Act 1, where it begins in the past, and you kind of see how Brazil had climbed up in the ranks of horrible organized crime, drug dealers, and this is an important part because without this part, you wouldn't get to where the movie is going to go. You don't get how the movie is going to really work without that first act, because it tells you literally everything about the film. And it does a good job of doing that by setting it in flashbacks. You get to see the rise of these crime lords, and you get to see the rise of the industry um, as a whole. And the movie doesn't really suffer for that because it gives you what you need so that when you go back to the present times, you get to pick out, okay, so it's like this, and it's done for a reason. And so the movie succeeds in into bringing up that act, and as well, it does the runners very well. Bringing in characters that you understand their personality traits, what they do and what they don't do. However, on the negative side, there are some characters that they're introduced that they don't reference again throughout the movie. But it's just little nitpicks like that that could damage a movie for someone who really looks into it a lot more often and really kind of pays attention to detail like that. But other than that, um, it wasn't really bad. And the movie, yet again, does a good job of underlining and teaching you that the first act is always going to be important. And that's one of the best elements, is that first act. It pulls you in, you get invested, and it's amazing. So I will use these theories and concepts when writing very, very importantly. You have to focus on your first act, or your whole script just goes up in flames, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't fit well. And what I learned from this film is to really set the tone and characters within your first act. Set the pieces on the chessboard and then start moving them as you start going along with your script. And you could do a really good job. And the connections I find with this and between other films is like the movie Friday, where it opens up in the neighborhood, it focuses on the characters, where they're sleeping, you get to see their ideal lives, you get to kind of see how they're living and what they're going through and their personal traits and thoughts as you go through the narration that also goes with it. So that also does a good job of introducing characters, the tone, the themes, the elements that really help the first act shine in a very big way. And the insights regarding this week's theory, um, they're good. The act one is very, very important, and a lot of people kind of need to take that to heart and to thought. So to summarize everything, focus on your act one very, very well. Ensure that you have your seeds planted. Ensure that everything that you could do is introduced. Not too much, but what you basically need for the rest of the film. And for my citation, this is from Lou Hunter, the Act 1 script. My name is Justin Rodriguez, and I will talk to y'all later. Peace.